Welcome everybody to Coaching in Higher Education webinar series. If it's your first time here, welcome. Again, it's nice that you found us. This webinar series aims to show and showcase the current practice of coaching in higher education. So we want to learn what's already happening, what you're working on, how you're using coaching in your own practice, how can we build on that, what can we learn from each other. So I'm very grateful to all the presenters who said yes to me when I approached them and wanted to share what they're working on. I know it's not always finished piece, so people are conscious, they don't want to share something that doesn't have the end or the positive results, but we do want to hear about work in progress, things you're thinking about, challenges you're coming across. So thank you to, I know a few of you from here already presented, so thank you to everyone who contributes to the series. All our previous webinars have been recorded and they can be accessed on our YouTube channel, which I will leave a link to later on in the chat. Okay, so today we have Jamie Mackay, who is the Head of Postgraduate Learning and Teaching Program and Academic Development at RCS. Jamie has a background in visual art and taught scenic art and theatre design for 18 years at the RCS before making transition to his current role in 2013. As the head of the part-time blended MEd Learning and Teaching in the Arts and the postgraduate certificate in Learning and Teaching in the Arts, Jamie and his team have developed innovative ways to offer hybrid learning experiences around the arts and arts education. Jamie qualified in life coaching in 2003 and has used coaching approaches throughout his teaching career, exploring these more formally as a postgraduate student between 2007 and 2009 and as a part-time PhD student from 2021, looking specifically at non-directive coaching as a model for artist development, which we will hear more about in today's presentation. In this session, Constructing a Self-Determined Learning Project, Jamie will unpack how coaching-based approaches have been embedded into MEd in Learning and Teaching in the Arts, specifically looking at how learners are supported to design and undertake a 60-credit self-determined final project in their third year of study. So without further ado, Jamie, it's over to you. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'm very excited to hear about your work.
Thank you, Lena. That's a really nice introduction. It's possibly covered my first slide. So didn't know I was getting a full introduction. That's fine. That's great. I can rush past that. Like, okay, let's start from the beginning. So hopefully you can all see that. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. I've been interested in coaching for a long time, but was very excited last year just to discover that Elena had set up this network and that this whole thing was a thing, because it's been at times quite a lonely journey getting to here. So it's been really exciting to be part of that and part of a network. So I'll continue. So this is a potted history of me. It's just covering basically what Elena said. I studied fine art at Glasgow School of Art many years ago, and then I began, having left art school where there are very few careers for painters. I did actually manage to get a job as a scenic artist, and then taught scenic art and theatre design for a number of years on the production programmes at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. I did qualifying in life coaching way back in 2002, I think, and with the Life Coaching Academy, as it was called then. And I'd come from my interest in art school. I'd become interested in personal development books and professional development, the kind of models for how people learn and develop in kind of real life scenarios, which kind of got me interested in life coaching and led me to sign up to that program. And then I began to use that in my teaching. As I was working with students, I would do coaching style tutorials with them. But there wasn't much evidence around that linking the coaching process to academic learning and studies. So when I did my PG Cert on coaching, I found it quite difficult to find sources that provided that kind of academic credibility that you're kind of expected to find within a PG Cert qualification. It was a lot within the business context, and whilst I could see that it was totally relevant, it wasn't necessarily academically backed up at that point, or I struggled to find. That might have been my poor searching at that time. Over the years at my work, I've developed various coaching models, from a personal supervision model to a kind of professional development model. But I developed the PG Cert. Well, we had a PG Cert, but I developed it alongside an MEd, Learning, Teaching in the Arts program, which I decided that actually the way I wanted to work with learners, and this is at master's levels, it was in a kind of coaching approach as much as possible, but also finding that wasn't entirely possible to have a fully coaching process. And I think it was just this one point in lockdown, I decided I'm going to do a PhD, because I've been looking at this for 20 years or more, and in fact more than that, and I thought, I'm reading books around it, I'm writing about it, I might as well try and get a qualification, which is also kind of recognizing that I have done some work around this, because it was all just me saying, oh, I've done all this, and nobody was listening. So hopefully people start listening to me if I'm a doctor of coaching. That's not really why I'm doing it. But anyway, our students on the MEd program, and it's MEd, and we have a PG Cert, which is kind of is nestled in the MEd, but I'll just refer to the MEd. They teach within any of these kind of contexts, non-formal or formal contexts, any of these art subjects, or any art subject that kind of comes under that banner. And increasingly, we're seeing people coming from all over the world, and these are some of the places we've had students from. Predominantly, it was UK based and Scotland based, but now we're kind of seeing more of a wider spread, which is great, because it gives us a much richer spectrum of learners and of opinions and of ideas, and it's all around arts education. The professional learning that we offer sits at the kind of centre of what the programme requirements are for a master's level study. But the programme is also, the PG Cert modules are also aligned with the UK, well, the PSF as it's now known, and lead to advanced HE fellowship at the D2 level. So the programme is built around that kind of model, but it's also designed for teachers in a Scottish school context. So it's mapped also to the General Teaching Council Scotland's career-long professional learning standards. But also a major part of the design and the major part of the intention was that people could use the programme to explore their own personal aspirations in areas of their practice which they are passionate about. We just felt that, possibly from my own experience of working on the PG Cert, that the ability to decide what you want to explore, to set your own goals for your learning, made it far more possible you'd be able to find the time to do that whilst you study alongside your professional roles and alongside any kind of, often the kind of caring roles that adult learners tend to have more than let's say a full-time undergraduate student. When I started running the program, I thought we were working in andragogy. I'd heard of andragogy. I knew that people often refer to all kind of education contexts as pedagogy, but pedagogy at its root means leading boys, which is an even more problematic term these days. But in terms of as a kind of at its core definition, that's what it is, but it tends to be associated more with kind of that school-based teacher-centered learning. Andragogy is the leading of adults, and I thought that's what I was doing for a long time, until maybe about 6 or 7 years ago I came across this term heutagogy. Not many people have heard of it. Heutagogy, you could argue about how it's pronounced, and the people who kind of invented it as a term also argue about how it's pronounced, but it's really, it marks this kind of furthest along approach towards learner maturity and autonomy. And it's defined by this huta, meaning discover, so you're leading discovery. And when I read about this and I started to get interested, it's also known as self-determined learning, is another term that's used to describe the same thing. And the principles are that the learner controls the process of learning. The learning is complex and requires new connections and insights, and the learning becomes self-directed. And it's focused on what the learner wants to know, not what the syllabus has predetermined that the learner should know. So when I discovered this model, I thought this is actually what I aspire to offer in terms of the learning experience. Because when you're dealing with people from all over the world, and you're dealing with people across all arts education kind of contexts and all arts disciplines, we can't possibly be an expert in all these areas to be able to tell people what they should be doing to support learning in that context. They're the experts. They may have been professionals for 20, 30 years in a role. So the approach had to be one which was around helping people to explore their practice rather than trying to determine what people's practice should be. I'm going to describe throughout this the program in terms of fruit, and I'll explain why later. But this is what the program looks like. It's 5 bits of fruit, 2 in year 1, 2 in year 2, and 1 big piece of fruit in year 3. So bear that in mind. We'll come back to it. Well, actually, I'll start talking about the first couple. So the first module that people study is the Teaching the Arts module, and they study that alongside an arts context and culture module. We have these 2 strands running in years 1 and 2. One strand is about teaching practice inquiry, so really exploring yourself as a teacher. What does that mean to you? What's important to you? And then the other strand is exploring yourself as an artist, and what does that mean to you as a term? Not necessarily a professional artist, but certainly a professional educator. So the first year is really an exploration of identity, who you are as an artist, who you are as a teacher. And some of our students have, if you've saw it as a Venn diagram, the teaching part of their kind of identity would be possibly huge, whereas the artist might be very small or way in the past. But we also have people who come from the other end of the spectrum, where they have their main role is as an artist, but they do a little bit of teaching as well. So we have this kind of complex range of needs. And one of the things that we discovered that we really needed to help people develop was an understanding of how they construct knowledge, coming very much from a constructivist point of view about how learning happens. The development of criticality is really important to the success of our learners. I'll come back to that later. But if we take you to this ideal of an island, a creativity island or a learning island, there's various ways in which you can construct a learning experience. There's learning route 1. So imagine you're going from point A to point B, and you're going through this jungle of knowledge and understanding and skills. But the quickest route is to take your learners along the path that runs right through the middle of the island that you've walked 100 times with different groups of learners, and you know which way to go, you know how to take them. It's a direct route. The aim is to get them there as quickly and efficiently as possible, so that they can then move from B on to something else. So this is the kind of mapped out route where you know what people need to learn, and you're basically leading them on the journey to achieve that. Another way of looking at learning is the treasure hunt, where you've got all these things in the jungle which you've placed there ahead of your learners arriving, and then you take them on a windy journey through the island, each time gathering the little things that they'll need to, so that by the end they get they've been on this kind of more investigative journey, but you're kind of still leading them to find this treasure that you know is already planted there in the island. So that's a second possible model. A third model might be this kind of discovery model where it's very much like, okay, here we've joined you at A, we've just dropped you off the boat. We'll see you at B in a year. Find your own way, and that can work in certain contexts. So that's a kind of fully discovery style learning approach. And then finally, I wanted to talk about the inquiry-based one, which is more like what we do. So you've got this A and B endpoint, but actually you've also got all these other potential endpoints. So people are actually determining where they're going to go on that journey and where they're going to leave this kind of island. So their exploration is still discovery based, but it's but they're determining the goal for that learning and what the end point should be. And this is more what we aspire to offer. I developed this model of a beach as a kind of concept for explaining what we're looking for from our learners, but also I suppose it's an attempt to describe how creativity happens, how learning happens. And it has this idea that you have this, on this island, you have a little piece of beach which is just yours, and only you can inhabit that area. And into the jungle, you have what I'm describing here as the external world. It's your conscious self, present experience, intellect, sensory awareness. It's where you're in the world. So the jungle is the external world that you can inhabit and you can explore and you can investigate. At the other extreme, we have the sea, which is your internal world, your unconscious self, your past experience, everything that's in your subconscious there as memory or intuition that you often don't have access to because it sits in this kind of subconscious domain. But what I've got in the middle is this beach, but there's 5 kind of areas I've split this up to. So if you think, going back to the jungle, if we say all went to see the same film, same movie, or maybe a better example would be to go and see a stage show, a musical theatre stage show, then each person you go with would come back with different memories of what was important to what stood out to them. Because I was interested or used to teach set design and scenic art, I'm probably more attuned to look for those things. Someone might be more interested in the singing, someone the music, someone the costumes, for example. So the fringes are where you kind of bring back from your experience fragments of very recent experiences, fragments of the things that stood out to you, the things that you remember from that immediate kind of just after the experience. So these, I've called this the fringes, where you're bringing these things back to the fringes of your beach. And then at the other side, you've got the shore, which is where often because of the fragments of the recent experience, they trigger memories to wash up onto your shore. Things that are already in your subconscious, they wash up. So if I said to you just now, imagine a dog, you're all going to, from your sea washing up onto your shore is a dog, or a couple of dogs. Or now they're running about and jumping over each other. Now there's like 5 of them and there's different types. You're imagining different ones from each other, but they're coming from your memory of what a dog is. Unless there's anyone here who has never experienced a dog, there's going to be dogs in your memory. So that's the point. What washes up is triggered by what you experience. And together, we bring these things together to construct our world. So we construct a unique version of the world, what it's like, and what the kind of external world, and what people are like, what the world is like, what's in that world. But we also, as artists, we can, and in any creative process, we construct our contribution to that world. So we make, even constructing a conversation, a presentation, constructing something we're putting into the jungle for other people to experience. But we construct it from the combination of our very recent fragments that we remember and fragments of older remembered experience, and we bring them together in this theory, which is unproven and not backed up by any form of empirical research. So nonetheless, I'm going to persevere with it. So if we zoom in a little bit, there's 2 kind of processes that I think are important here. Foraging So foraging in the jungle, finding things, and beachcombing. That's reflecting, taking time to wander along the shores, pick up bits and pieces that wash up and say, oh, I wonder what this means. I wonder why this has come up now. So if we take these kind of little items and bring them together onto the beach, what we're trying to do is make some kind of sense of these little fragments. So we try to construct them in ways that make sense. And sometimes you need to add a little bit of something else just to complete the picture. And you end up with a construction or a construct of some concept or some idea or some way of thinking. So that may be it might be a painting, might be a piece of artwork, but it may also be your underlying philosophy of how you teach or how learning happens. You're constructing it from this combination of experiences. And this to me is kind of how learning happens, really. So external sources, internal reflection, these come together and then you construct from that. That's the reason I'm kind of emphasizing this model is that it's kind of the underlying philosophy for the program of study. So year one, we really talk about that. What do we mean by constructing knowledge and understanding how your philosophy is built on what you already think, but we're encouraging our learners to go into the jungle, find learning theories and teaching theories which they resonate with them, and so that they can build and construct and articulate their own philosophy. So when we move to year two, students do the teacher as researcher, which is a practice-based research project where they go through an ethical approval process, they get research questions, they gather primary research. They also do an artist development module, which is freely open and is a response to in the previous year, the arts, context and culture. The final submission of that is a plan for your own development for year two. And in year two, you enact that plan for the development of your knowledge and skills in areas and in ways which are relevant to you. So that's the first kind of real open place where our learners have this chance to freely design their own learning journey. And so we kind of go through a soft kind of coaching process through the delivery of the arts, context and culture module to help people decide, well, what do they want to achieve? What are their goals? What's important to them? And what are the actions they can take to really engage with those goals? The teaching as teachers research is much more prescribed in the sense that it's a practice-based research project, but we also give them the kind of space and coach them to find out what it is they want to focus on and what it is they want to introduce, which is new, so that they can explore the impact on their learners. I came across, when I started studying my PhD, I came across self-determination theory, which I found was really interesting. And I always take concepts and then I steal them and tweak them and make them slightly different, because the self-determination theory has three basic psychological needs that everybody has to have. And the first one's autonomy. The second one is relatedness, but I've changed that to belonging because it makes a B, and it's pretty much the same thing the way they describe it. And then competence. So basically, the argument in self-determination theory is that you need to have these three things to have your kind of basic psychological needs met. And so I think probably when I've thought about our program, a big part of it is trying to build that community. It's also building the competence of master's level kind of scholarship. But it's important that the autonomy is that people can choose to use it in the ways that matter to them. So it's the kind of not just coaching in a kind of vacuum, it's coaching within these other two contexts. So I hear you say it must be time for self-determination theory's taxonomy of motivation. You're absolutely right. It is time to discuss that. This is a model which is also from Ryan and Deci, who developed the self-determination theory model, and I found this quite a useful way to think about motivation, because if you're interested in coaching, you must be interested in motivation, and if you haven't come across this might be an interesting model. Because I'd always had this distinction between extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation, and almost like the kind of binary discussion between the two. Either you're motivated by external forces, or you're motivated by an inner drive. But this creates a taxonomy which is a little bit more nuanced than that, which is I found quite interesting. So right at the end of the spectrum, A, motivation, you got people who are just not interested. They're just not there. They're absent because they're really not. There's no motivation. So it's characterized by absence. The kind of other extreme is in the intrinsic motivating, where you've got someone, it's all coming from the inside out. It's someone has this in them. They're driven to achieve, regardless of what you do. That intrinsic motivation is going to be what's driving them. So in between that, there's this big kind of gulf. So next to a motivation is the external motivation, the carrot and stick. It's reward, punishment. The next one along, they talk about introjected, which is a little bit further on from that, and it's like what should you do? It's like if I was a good person, I would do this, and I feel bad if I don't do this because I should do that. So it's kind of like, as an educator, you might guilt people into doing some studying or something like that. Identified as moving towards intrinsic, but it's more like now this reference will only be relevant to people of a certain age, and probably very few of you are here because probably very few of you are my age. But this is Mr. Ben. Mr. Ben, who was one of my favourite programs when I was growing up, and what he did was every episode he would walk into the costume store and put on a costume and then go into an adventure wearing that costume. So he'd be a cowboy, he'd be a clown, he'd be whatever. So this is about trying on an outfit. It's like you're trying something new on, knowing that it's not necessarily you, but you want to see, is this part of my identity? Is this who I am? And you get a chance to play around that. And then integrated is really this kind of sense of becoming. It's actually about growth and about learning and about, you recognize you're doing something, not because you're intrinsically motivated to it, but you're doing it because you know it is benefiting you. You're becoming a better person as a result of doing this. And you need to kind of separate these two different types out, because really the ones on the right are positive. The ones on the left, we shouldn't really be reinforcing. So you've got no goal if you're amotivated. You've got a goal someone wants you to pursue if it's external. You've got a goal you feel you should pursue if it's introjected. Identified as a goal you might think would be useful to pursue, and then an integrated one is a goal you believe will help you grow in a positive way. And then finally, intrinsic is a goal you're already pursuing for its own sake. Excuse me, right. Still with me? Yeah, good, okay. So this is the one I think is actually the important one in terms of education. If someone's already intrinsically motivated to do something, they'll do it anyway. So I think this is where we can really work with people to help them determine the goals which are they know or they begin to believe will be positive for their own development, help them grow in a positive direction that's meaningful to them. It's got to be meaningful to them personally. So if we move to the final project, which is the big melon here, this is a 60 credit module. It's one module in final year, and it's a project that they work on. And going back to this island, this is how to describe it. I use this island metaphor quite a lot. They have to design, so this is mapping out a journey, and undertake a project that addresses key established learning needs in your sector and your own professional development priorities at master's level. That's the scope of what they have to do. There is one fixed submission, and that is they have to produce an assessment rubric with a rationale explaining why they've made the decisions they have within that rubric. But then, so if I use this idea of the learner comes into a box, they come in the bottom left and they come out the top right. And what we're interested in terms of a journey is about this concept of change. What is it that's going to change? What's going to change in terms of the learners? It might be a change in the organisation that they work for. It might be a change in the sector. Predominantly, it's a change in them as learners. It's what change do they want to make to themselves, to their own practice. It's 60 credits, so it's a notional 600 hours of study over the year. And it's set at what in Scotland is the Scottish Credit Qualifications Framework Level 11, which is master's level study. But then they have to decide what they're going to do. This assessment rubric with rationale is 1,500 words. The whole thing should be about 12 to 15,000 words. So they've got a major chunk to design. In case you're not familiar with it, this exciting model, the Scottish Credit Qualifications Framework, which anyone who's working in education must get excited by this type of framework. Master's level is just up here, level 11, just under doctoral degree, and for each of the levels, the Scottish Credit Qualifications Framework has identified 5 different characteristics: knowledge and understanding, practice, applied knowledge, skills and understanding, generic cognitive skills, communication, numeracy and ICT skills, and autonomy, accountability and working with others. And for each of the 12 levels of the SCQF, they're described in terms of these 5 characteristics, getting progressively more complex the higher the level goes. If you just take the knowledge and understanding one, I did this kind of word cloud. This is all the words that are in the descriptor for level 11. And this is all the words, sorry, for level 10, and this is the descriptor for level 11. The key one we draw students' attention to is this word critical and criticality, because that's the major difference between the undergraduate and the master's level study, is that they need to be able to critically investigate their own practice, their own thought process, their own assumptions, and those of other writers or theorists that they're looking at. This is probably too small for you to see, but this is an example of the rubric. This is the rubric for that first submission, which is, this is where it gets really confusing. We're asking them to create a rubric, which they're then going to be assessed against a different rubric on, and then that rubric they produce is the one they're going to be assessed on for the rest of the submission. It could take some, I'm not going to spend the time going through that because it's kind of like a snake eating itself kind of a thing. But nonetheless, this is how it works. There's a learning outcome at the top, and that's the one I showed you already. And then they've got this rubric, which is 1,500 word rationale, 3 criteria, and for each of those criteria is defined in terms of what an assessor would expect to see if it's a strong pass, satisfactory pass, marginal fail, or clear fail. Now it's just pass, fail, or MEd. There's no grading on it, so we don't need to do this, but we felt it's useful for our assessors. It's useful for our learners because we ask our learners to do a self-assessment on everything they do against the rubric from the first submission that they make in year 1. So that we can be utterly transparent about what the criteria are that are fixed, so that they can see where the scope is for their own autonomy within those criteria. So we give them this blank one, which they have to fill in, and then create a rationale for. That's how they work towards this. So, fruit. Why did I give you the fruit? Well, these are some of the examples of final year projects. We don't want everyone to create the same tin of fruit cocktail. Other brands are available. The idea is that they produce something unique to their context, to their kind of combination of things they've gathered in the jungle, and their own combination of what's in their kind of in their sea washing up in the shore from their memory, from their own practice, and to produce something that is meaningful to them, meaningful in their professional context, and transforms them in some degree. Now, one of the most difficult things we find working with educators is for them to stop thinking for a little bit of time about their learners and what they're doing to support their learners, and to get them to think about themselves as the learner, and to get them to define what it is they're going to learn and how they're going to change through doing their final project. So some of the examples from this year's cohort who just graduated in October there. There's an exploration of HND jewellery students' creativity and design processes when introduced to sustainable materials and processes. So that was from a student in a further education college. An exploration of the crit, the traditional kind of art school crit across disciplines at Glasgow School of Art, exploring the values and tensions embedded in its practice. And that was someone who sat in on a critique, as they're kind of known in the art school context, in 5 different disciplines, from architecture, fine art, interior design set, and actually did a visual mapping of who was talking in the room, how often, and actually showed this as an animation, so that actually it indicated in some cases the teacher was talking almost the whole time, and sometimes there was a lot of dialogue, and sometimes it was only certain people who were talking. So it was a really interesting way of mapping what actually happens in that kind of context, and report. And he's gone on to present at various conferences and such like. And exploration of the influence of personal stories and drawing on students' motivation to create art. So it was kind of another student in a college context who was exploring how to engage his learners in creating art without that sense of self-consciousness that kind of holds them back from producing artwork or makes them perfectionist or hesitant. And it's a really interesting study. Exploration of strategies to address photography's colonial and racial past as part of a decolonising the curriculum strategy. Again, that was a desk-based kind of study. Didn't contain primary research for that one, but it was a really interesting outcome, and it will lead to some further research after the graduate are going to continue that on. An exploration of acting and performance students' experiences in the design and delivery of their own self and peer assessment activities. Exploration of the advantages, drawbacks, and broader implications of evolving AI technology in photographic instruction. An exploration of agency-focused pedagogy to address accentism bias within contemporary UK performance and education. So just to unpack what accentism bias is that kind of sense that within the performance and education, performance industry and education sector, there's a bias away from regional accents, or has been, towards that kind of the traditional London-based kind of received pronunciation that can often impact someone's ability to study. Well, so he was exploring that because things have changed, but how much have they changed, and what can we do about that? An exploration of the impact of funding cuts, digital poverty, and blended learning on HND interior design in Scotland, covering a period of 5 years. And then an exploration of the characteristics of Generation Z and the implications for higher education, which was actually a study from a couple of years ago. I put it in there because it's a really interesting one. The student who works at RCS in the production department was exploring, in the first instance, how they can help their learners to engage, recognizing that the learners were maybe less robust or less resilient than they'd been before, and are coming into a context where they seem to be less able to kind of survive in that kind of production context. And the idea was that, well, how can we help them to fit in better with that? But halfway through the study, realised, no, it's us that need to change. The educators need to change. So it was a real kind of discovery for her in that project. Obviously, the journey to everyone doing the same tin of fruit cocktail is much easier to manage than the one which is on the right here, which is the kind of individual pathways, the individualized routes. And instead of determining one end point that everybody has to reach with one criteria, what we have to do is look at it from a position of almost like a kind of coming out from a concentric rings of quality, where we have to get past a threshold of master's level, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in a particular way. Much of it is the student have to articulate to us why what they're doing is master's level and why it's fitting the criteria for master's level study. That's in the kind of rationale for the rubric in the first instance. And I felt this was useful because this is a model that I discovered when I was doing my PG cert back in 2007-8. It's a model from Brockbank and McGill's supporting reflective learning through mentoring and coaching, and I adapted that to be about teaching specifically. What it does is it kind of contrasts teaching for transformation and teaching for maintaining a status quo. And for us, that could be something like either you're teaching someone music to explore possibilities and come up with new ideas, or you're teaching them to fit into the role of a third violinist in an orchestra, where you're not expected to be creative as such in the same. Excuse me, I've also got a cough that's been plaguing me. And then the other axis is individual against group. So as an educator, do you think of individuals or do you think of the group? And for me, this gave me kind of 4 different models for teaching. There's the trainer module, which is you kind of treat everybody as you all start at the same place and you're all going to the same endpoint. So that's kind of you can imagine that works, particularly in something like, let's say, health and safety. You want everybody to learn a basic thing at the same endpoint, and you're not going to treat people differently because it's just going to get on with the teaching a big group. The mentor role is slightly different. You recognize that everybody's starting from a different position, but still the aim is to get them to fit in the same mold. So you're trying to get them towards the same endpoint, albeit recognizing they have different journeys.
You're muted, Jamie.
Yeah,
You're
just
back.
thank you. I'm back. Yeah, the focus on transformation and group is kind of like the kind of revolutionary. The terms that Brock, Blank, and McGill use is revolutionary, and I associate that with this idea of a leader who is leading from saying, this is where we need to get to. We need to transform the industry like this, and you can all come with me on that journey. Anybody who doesn't want to come can fall by the wayside. That's fine, but I'm headed here, and you're coming. And then it leaves this last one, which is dealing with transformation and the individual. And this is the one I feel is about coaching. So it's again looking at people from this position. They might be going in all different directions. They've all got their own goals and endpoints, and it's about how do you support individuals to how do you support multiple individuals to reach uniquely different endpoints. And that's very much what we do in the program. So I think, and this is where I'm coming, the self-determination theory has a wealth of research behind it. It's got decades and decades of research behind it, and the Ryan and Desch's book is that thick, and it's a big book. There's so much in it. So many of the different concepts are built up by research practice. But I have the arrogance to add other letters to it, because for me it helps me at work. Now, I'm not. Again, I will reiterate, this is not based on any evidence. This is based on just a thought that I thought, well, actually, what is missing from this self-determination theory for me is the sense that you could have autonomy and you could have a sense of belonging. And in that group, whilst you're using your autonomy, you could be developing skills and competencies. But you could be doing that as, for example, you could have joined a try not to be too controversial, but you could join a neo-Nazi group, and you could feel a sense of belonging. You could have autonomy. You could be in charge of your own little group within that. You could be developing skills and kind of and being nasty and scaring people. But so would you have your basic psychological needs met? Well, possibly. But I think what is missing is, firstly, a direction. What are you going to use autonomy, belonging, and competence for? What is the direction of where are you headed with this? Not destination, because I think the key thing is that you don't have to wait till you get there till you've got your psychological needs met. But I think you have to have a strong sense of direction, and your sense of direction. If you share your sense of direction with the group, you have a shared sense of direction. That's all the better for that sense of belonging, for that sense of kind of feeling that the competence you're developing is competence in the right direction. It's skills that are actually aligned with your values, and not content to just leave it at an extra letter. I've added another one, and this is where I think it connects back to what we offer on the program and how that the direction really is for me. This is the coaching part of it, the goals-based coaching part of it. But E is the actual journey, is the inquiry. It's facilitating people to go on a journey of inquiry into how they might move in a particular direction. And that's really what the MEd program is built on. For these MEd sessions, instead of just go back, just the final project module, we don't deliver a lot of content because the students are on their own unique projects. So, but we do a little bit, but not much. So most of it is about coming together and talking about where they are at certain points. It's part-time blended learning, so we only have a couple of online sessions and a couple of weekend sessions over the year. But quite often it's a 2-hour session, and in the second half of the session, I'll offer a group coaching thing, so that it helps people to decide what their actions are next. And sometimes at the start, the first weekend session, say, okay, for the project you want to do, what are the skills? You probably have seen a similar model to this kind of scoring mechanism. What skills do you need to be able to do what it is you want to do over this year? What are the skills to achieve this project? What are the skills? And then on a scale of 0 to 10, asking them to score themselves against these skills to identify where the strengths are, where they need to work the most, and to have a kind of look at that to see whether how balanced that that map is at the moment. And it helps them prioritize, okay, what do I need to do what do I need to develop? What are the skills or the knowledge that I need to acquire over this year to achieve this project? And then I take them through my derivation of the GROW model, which I've just adapted. It doesn't make a nice acronym unless GABOA means anything to anybody. It doesn't to me. But I've just changed that a little bit because I felt it was more direct in terms of working with learners and you've not got much time. So goals, what are your goals? And often we'll say, let's just focus on between now and the next 2 months or next month. So identifying the goals, what are the barriers? I'll just talk them through this as a group. What are the options? So what could you explore? What are the possibilities for the exploration? And then the actions, what you're actually going to do. And for that actions one, this goes way back to the coaching training I got, or coaching program I got back in the early 2000s, is asking them once they have their actions written down to score their commitment to those, well, actually to put a specific date and time to do each one, but then to score their commitment to taking that action. And if they score less than, or 7 or less, I get them to kind of question those actions and question what they could do to improve that. So we're nearly there. I talk about education as being like a box. You go into the bottom left and you come out the top right. Somehow changed. It's also a coaching experience. I'd say this describes what happens in a coaching session. But specifically on the MEd program, I talked about inquiry, that E level, that how we support that kind of process of development. We have teaching practice inquiry alongside arts practice inquiry, leading to professional inquiry, which looks like this, and it's question-based. Teaching the arts, how do you want to evidence your teaching is effective? Arts context and culture, how do you want to evidence your arts practice is relevant and current? Teachers researcher, how do you want to enhance your teaching practice? Artist development, how do you want to enhance your arts practice? And then finally, and this sounds like a aspirational goal, how do you want to contribute to the evolution of arts education? I always kind of add to the end of that, in however small a way, moving it forward in the right direction. Back to that concept of direction. How can you push it forward in a positive direction? So yeah, that's the end of the presentation. So there's a couple of QR codes. If you are links there, I'll send the slides on to Elena. Oh, she's got them anyway, so you can send them out. Right, I'll stop sharing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jamie. I learned so much about you and how you adapt every theory you come across.
Which or steal, Elena.
Steal and adapt. which shows your own criticality and constructing your own knowledge and experiences, which is what you want from your students as well. Thank you so much for that. I have loads of questions, but that would be selfish of me to use the time. So I will just open to everyone else. If they have any questions, please, you can post them in a chat or just raise your hand and we will come to you. We do have a question from Lisa in a chat, which is about hoitogogy. How do you pronounce it, Jamie?
I pronounce it hutagogy, as in owl based. If you think of owls, like hooting owls. But I did speak to Lisa Marie Blash, who's one of the main proponents of the theory as well, who's worked with Stuart Hayes and Kenyon. They developed a model, and I think they call it hutagogy. I think she calls it hoitagogy, but really there's no agreement on it. But self-determined learning is probably safer.
I like hoitagogy. Thank you. So given that what Lisa says, given that we all work in learning and co-creative environment that's being encouraged in higher education, it is interesting that it's not used more widely. So why do we think that is? In your own research, I don't know if you found any.
It's a great question. I think that I think it's not used more widely. If I think about my own context, I think it's not used more widely because there's in the arts, in some arts, let's say, there's a sense of master apprentice model. So you come, we still hear about learners who are coming from China to study under someone as a learner. It's like hierarchical. I think the challenge is hierarchical. I think that many people who are educators see themselves as their role is to maybe not as much as just filling buckets as well. It's that kind of filling buckets versus lighting fires, but still that they have that responsibility to provide for the learners what their learners will need, and especially the more. I think probably the issue is that certainly in the schools context in Scotland, and I imagine it's the same in England and beyond, that there is a kind of pressure on educators to help learners get to very prescribed endpoints, which sometimes actually gets in the way of the more creative, more expansive learning. So the chance for learners in schools to really kind of determine what they might want to learn and what they might want to explore is limited. And I think that comes on into higher education when the learners expect to be kind of, is this an exam? What do I need to learn? How do I prepare for my assessment? How do I prepare for my performance? So I think probably my short summary answer is that I think there's too much emphasis on performance and not enough on learning.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think that's not just from educators, but the sector expectations, the institutional strategies and metrics and everything else. A lot of compliments in the chat for you, Jamie. People enjoyed the webinar and thanking you for sharing your thoughts and ideas. Some people had to leave because we are getting to the full hours, which is always a challenge. The next question we have is, how many students do you have in a group coaching session?
I've run group coaching sessions with kind of up to like 30, 40 people. But I could do it. You could do it online. You could do it with 100 people. The question is how much you, how much you want to hear from the learners about what they've actually written. I don't think you have to if you're taking someone through that process, but it can be useful. The bigger numbers you get, the less chance it is for everybody to get a chance to kind of say why I wrote this and I'm struggling with this part of it. But you can deliver that content to large numbers of people. In our sessions, it tends to be, because we do a session in the morning and a session in the evening, because there's people all around the world, so so it tends to be fairly small numbers, so we can have a little bit of conversation about it, and that's maybe usually five or six people. I also do a lot of kind of one-to-one. I did a coaching session yesterday with a third year student who was kind of exploring, actually wanting to explore their whole practice and where their direction was, where they were going in their role, rather than the actual project itself. And I think it's always most effective one-to-one, but I think but it's entirely possible at much bigger scale than that. See, Lisa's got a hand up there.
Thank you, Jamie. Lisa.
Hi, thank you. Sorry for all the things going on in the background here. Yeah, I just really interested. Loved all the images. I think somebody else has put that as well. Just fantastic. You see from the creative arts, but really brings it to life with the visuals. Yeah, I sort of put a bit of a comment. I've just sort of developed my thought as we've been going through. That self-determination theory. Autonomy, relatedness, or belonging, as you call it, and competence. I always quite like Daniel Pink's version because he talked about purpose, and I think you summarize that with the direction. But you're right, by adding that inquiry, without that curiosity behind it to further it, I really think you've got something with that model that we should be sharing more widely. I really like it.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, no, I've been really inspired by Daniel Pink's work and motivation. It really kind of transformed my thinking when I came across that, and I continue to read his work because it's always really interesting. And I like the fact he talks about models and he talks about simplifying ways of that's for me the biggest challenge. I think working with learners is to try to get something that's quite complex and try to simplify it down to a way which is kind of like, okay, I get the concept, now I can get back to being more complex with it. And I think Daniel Pink does a brilliant job on that, and it's all kind of evidence-based as well if you go back into the kind of work he's coming from. So yeah, and thank you for that positive feedback. It's nice to hear because I don't share it often. So this is great. Thank you.
And so I'm glad that you're sharing it here, and it is recorded, so it can be shared more widely. We definitely will. I just want to say a little bit on purpose. That's one of the things I really wanted to ask about, is the assessment rubric that you're asking students to start with, which starts with identifying that purpose, that goal, which I really like the idea of that. Curie, you have a question.
Hello, thank you so much. So Jamie, it really intrigues me, and I'd love to follow up separately. There's a reverse engineering. I started as a medical doctor and then did an interdisciplinary arts PhD, which was on drawing for health communication. So there's a lot of resonance, and in the middle of it, I've been coaching, and I'm an embodiment coach now. So through my PhD, which was how can drawing, open-ended drawing, expressive drawing, intuitive drawing, help you explore wicked problems like your own aging with no easy answer, I came across embodied cognition. And embodied cognition, so I came across it theoretically, but it really hooked me in. And so I'm now an embodiment facilitator. So I wondered if that had come up. It wasn't a word that you used. So embodiment is about, well, it's so many things, but about, but also the bodily felt expression of moving through with purpose, the panic, the anxiety, the not coping, and actually how to self-regulate so that you can move with purpose. So it's a big question, but does embodiment come into this in your thought?
It'd be great to have a further conversation about this, but just I don't know a huge amount about it, except that one of my students, there was one of the examples in the kind of final projects there, Giovanni, he did a lot of his work in embodied practice for drawing, exactly that in an FE college context, where he was trying to get his learners to and actually try to get them to embody artistic isms, like embody impressionism somehow and then enact that out, and or cubism, or he's trying so that kind of sense of the connection of the body with the actual kind of the mind and what you're actually producing. And I think it's a fascinating area. I loved his project, and so it'd be great to talk more about that. It's not something myself I've worked with, because my kind of art form as as kind of a visual art form for me has always been, if I was painting, it was me standing in front of a kind of an easel with usually one hand in my pocket, another one with, so hardly moving. I mean, I'm fascinated to find out more. Many students and many of my colleagues who maybe are within a dance context or a performance context, that will be much more what they're looking at. I would see a lot of them looking at embodied practice in various different ways. So yeah, lots we could have a chat about.
Super, thanks.
I can see a joint presentation coming up soon.
Yeah, look for that.
I love Amy's comment in the chat. Jamie, I think you'd love to see my notes from this. Arrows, watermelon, silence, owls. I would love to see that. If you feel comfortable with that, Amy, please do put a photo in the chat. It would be great to see.
Yes, it would.
Showing. Sorry, reading in the chat, checking if there's a question. I would like to invite people to just put their hand up and join the conversation and ask a question if that's easier. We are a smaller group now. We do have another 20-ish minutes, but I know that people also have other things going on. So if you have a question or a comment, do join in. And while you're thinking about it, I will ask my question, which is mostly about how the team, Jamie, so you and the team who are teaching on MEd, I love your passion for this, to let students go on this discovery journey. And I wonder how you navigate these tensions against supporting that versus timelines, institutional metrics and expectations, and traditional setting that you have to work in. I'm really intrigued of how you got that, how you worked through that, and how did you get that kind of model working?
Yeah, that's the Achilles heel. Yeah, because when you give learners the kind of autonomy to develop their own work and develop their own ideas, you also kind of sort of hand over them responsibility for making sure that that happens within a certain time frame. We get an enormous number of extension requests, and we try to, because these are people who are balancing either a full-time teaching position, which is intense, or they're balancing a portfolio of roles, or perhaps they're a performer as well, so they might get a chance to go work on a show for 3 weeks that they didn't anticipate. All these things, all these reasons make us kind of really quite flexible, and we were the first of our kind of institutions part-time programs, so all our kind of mechanisms are targeted towards full-time students. So we've had to work in the shadows and work in the kind of in the kind of grey areas of, like, well, if a student usually only gets a 7-day extension period for a submission, if they're on a part-time program over 3 years, or a third of a program, that's 21 days surely. And then you're working on these kind of grey areas. So and you have to just be flexible and creative about how you support people. I don't know that it would be any easier if you were more prescriptive about it. I think actually the reason the students find it so meaningful, and we get a lot of really positive feedback from our learners about it, is that challenge. But it does take them a lot longer to work out what they want to do. It's like and I know there's studies around this, the paradox of choice, that idea that and there's a study of jams at a local fair. I don't know if you know, but essentially the study showed that they offered seven, I think 3 or 4 types of jam at a stand. This is a real kind of live study, and see how many jams they sold. And the next day they had like 20 different types of jam, and they sold a fraction of the amount of jam, because there was people working on it going, oh, I don't know, maybe I should get that one, maybe I should get that. I can't decide. But when there's a few, so that kind of, if you give learners that chance to decide what they want to do, when you select, you can do anything as long as it's 60 credits worth, and as long as it's at master's level. We can have some people taking a long time to decide, and then that puts the pressure on the later part of it. But we just tried to be as flexible as possible, and push the rules.
I love the persistence despite all the challenges and barriers, and almost taking more time can be seen as a success. Someone really taking time to think and to find their own journey. The snapshot of a drawing is in a chat for everyone who wants to see. I love it. Thank you, Amy, for sharing it. I really like to see that.
I'm just going to say I'm clearly not an artist, but I've drawn something today. Well done, Jamie.
I would argue you are. And I love that. I love you. Yeah, because I'm very diagram based on everything, and so I did most of my PGCE was just hundreds of diagrams. Now I've lost everybody. Where are you all? I was looking at your picture. Now I can't find you all. Right, there we are.
Okay, so I'll go to Giovanna first, and then a couple of comments in the chat.
Hi, thank you very much, really, for this talk and for reframing a little bit the self-determination theory. I like what you added, because I've been using self-determination theory a lot in my research, in my practice, and but I wanted to ask you something, because you answer the question about how you fit the creativity and also the support to the students, which are actually staff within the system. And I feel we have been doing the same tricks and the negotiation with the university. So this is, but I have also, well, I teach in a PG cert for teachers, and we have also a research module. And I know, staff is obliged to do the PG cert. So they start not just unmotivated, but against it. All right. So it's very difficult to create it's very difficult to create self-determination when actually people don't want to have it. Actually, they don't want to be there. So I've been thinking a lot, when I came, okay, shall I give them freedom for the research project? And I was advised against that, because with the reason being they will do the less is possible, or the least is possible, or, very small things, which, kind of lack of trust. But actually, after 3 years, I am kind of shifting and saying, well, they were right, actually, in a way. So, which is something that I don't like, because actually, for me, very important is agency. So, is there anything? Did you have students on your program that lost motivation, they were not interested in anything, and then how did you get them back, or how did you get them in first place? Because this is the problem. And I would say that if we have a module where they have to conduct research, I would love that the research is on their own project, not on something that I decide for them, because this is, the nature of research is the discovery that you are interested in. So how to work with people who come not self-determinated, basically, or against it?
I think it's a great question. And I think it's it's one of those things when it comes to coaching. You can't enforce a coaching model on somebody who doesn't want to be coached, because it kind of counteracts what you're trying to do. We are fortunate. We're quite a small institution, and most of our students are not from our institution on the AMEd program. It's open to the wider community, and people have to. Within our PGCE, there were some people who did have to in the past, and there was definitely a process of helping them work out what they wanted to do with it. But I think central to that was the amount of autonomy they had on what they actually explored. Now I talk about I didn't put this slide in. I thought it was too much there already, but I talk about the difference between a jigsaw, a collage, and a painting. And for me, I talk to the learners, but the jigsaw part of it is these are the things you've got to do a certain way. They only fit together one way, and the picture at the end of it is going to be determined. It's said. So for that, in that context, the picture is like academic referencing, Harvard style referencing, or constructing an academic argument, the kind of structure of a kind of submission, or these kind of mechanical processes that they need to get right at master's level. It needs to have criticality. So there's a kind of, it's almost like the non-negotiables that they have to just learn to put together the jigsaw in the right way. The collage I always saw is like they're gathering citations and references and information from other sources. So it's like a collage, like a kind of scrapbook collage of ideas, but they choose what they're finding and they bring it together and they try to make some kind of sense of it and some kind of argument. But it's a collage, and each collage is unique, but it's maybe drawn on the same kind of reference material, but it's like a collage. And then there's the kind of blank canvas, you can do what you like kind of thing. And usually it's a combination of all these three things. The stuff that's coming from them personally is more like the blank canvas. It's like I'm passionate about this. I want to do this because it's interesting to me. And that the collages will contextualize that kind of blank canvas thing in the world of the literature and the criticality around that. So you can still follow your passion, but you need to connect it to literature sources. But we're not necessarily saying it has to be these literature sources. It just has to be credible literature sources to help you make your argument for your approach to it. And then you have to package it in that jigsaw way that it fits the right criteria for the thing. But I think I would find it very difficult if they didn't have the blank canvas element of it at any point. If it was only about, here's what we want you to go into the jungle to find. It's kind of like the treasure map thing. It's like, we want you to go in and find these 5 things and then tell us about what you found. And I think for the learners we work with, that would be very difficult. But I have experiences with learners, like, for example, people who teach one-to-one music, who've got to that second module around teacher as researcher and said, I don't know, I do it the way I was taught, and I don't see any room for development or any change. There's no need for changing that. And it's like, well, okay. Let's explore that. So they ended up creating some video resources for in between their one-to-one sessions, and they thought, oh, that actually is quite transformative. But on the MEd program, everybody who applies to it has to do a presentation, a 10-minute presentation on what they might use that final project for. So you get a sense of what it is that they're interested in, whether the program's right to support that journey, and what they might do building towards that, what they might need to learn for that. So so I think that's useful. We don't have that presentation element in our PG cert, and I've often wondered whether we should, for the reasons you've just described there. So yeah, it's complicated, but I think I'd find it very difficult if they didn't have that autonomy.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, yeah, it could be that the induction, instead of being the place where we tell them what they have to do, we could revert the roles and have them presenting and thinking what they would like to do, and then we help them building from there, from the very beginning. Yeah. In the PG cert, not in the master. Oh, thank you.
Glad to help with
that. Then I can build things. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Also, as you were explaining, Jamie, it strikes me that all these learners are going away, having learned how to explore and have autonomy, but also fit that under someone else's expectations and someone else's frameworks, if needs be, which is what we need to do in higher education. Curie, sorry, you wanted to respond.
Yeah, it was just it was an idea. It may be too radical, Giovanna. So one of the things I've done with several groups, I ran the PG cert. It wasn't with the PG cert groups, but it was about thinking about a research study. What are your research interests for a project? Is actually getting them to do a collage, and and this is my specialism, but I would say let the images call to you. So actually they're not thinking. It's a different type of thinking. They build their image, and then so the prompt is, what is it that interests you about your education? What is it that interests you about your research? So you do put in a prompt, they build their image, and there is resistance. That's absolutely fine. And then they talk through with others, what is it that's emerged? And what tends to happen is really strong patterns come about, something like inclusivity or disability, or do you know what I mean? Something that's really important to them. And they can see, you know, my brother is disabled and he's really struggled at school, and I'd like to make a difference. And that is seeded from right at the beginning. But it also starts them talking about what they're passionate about in a way they don't have to formulate through words first, in a coherent argument, because they're talking through an image and to each other. And that has worked really well. Just depends.
Yeah, thank you. I think that I have to take a radical approach anyways, because I'm not happy and they're not happy and they're scared about research, and then they're doing it in a, you know, you have to push that. This is not how it should happen. So yeah, thank you. I think that I will contact both of you again.
Please do.
Because I have to shake the system where I am, which actually allows me freedom at the end of the day, but I have to shake it and change it, because this is not really satisfying, I'd say.
Yeah.
We're starting a revolution here. I love it.
Great. I mean, I think for me that it works on two levels. That particularly that final project, we're asking students to create their own assessment rubrics at master's level. So they have to create. That's part of the learning, is how do you design your own learning. So how do you do it in a robust way, which is. But each of these kind of tasks we ask them to do, they do have autonomy, but they have to write a rationale to support that. So how is that going to support your professional development? How is that going to meet the standards that are relevant to your context? And it could be the PSF standards. How are you going to develop your kind of areas of kind of more priority within that? So it is freedom with responsibility to justify decision making. So it's not just about having that autonomy. So it also actually ends up being more robust or just as robust anyway, because they have ownership of that journey. I think that's the ownership is the key thing, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can see that many of us had to leave. So I want to say thank you while it's still recording, so I can package it in a nice YouTube video. Thank you, Jamie, so much, because
Pleasure.
Clearly it was a very informative, very interesting presentation for all of us, and we had a lot of questions and follow-ups. I love seeing people saying, I will get in touch with you. That's the purpose of this network, that we connect with each other. So thank you everyone for attending, for giving your time to this. And our next webinar will be announced shortly. I think it's in January. So I will send the details for that soon.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for hosting. And thanks
Thank
everybody
you,
for joining.
Have a lovely day, everyone. Bye-bye.